Hey everyone, Chris Carter here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Today, I want to talk about should the Steelers be interested in trading for Jalen Ramsey, who is being shopped around by the Dolphins right now. We'll talk about that and take more of your questions here on the Steelers offense, right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily dose of all things in the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find the show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoyed. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the number one sportsbook in America. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when you hit on your first bet of $5 or more today. More on FanDuel later. All right, Steelers fans, we're getting ready for the weekend. Hope everyone had a great Juneteenth. Let's talk about a topic that's being kicked around. And listen, I know it's the dead part of the offseason, but this is something that is starting to get more heat as far as talking online. And I figured I'd take a segment to address it. And that's whether or not the Steelers should be interested in trading for Dolphins cornerback, Jalen Ramsey. Now, everyone knows Jalen Ramsey, big name in the NFL, huge successful career that he's had in his time in the NFL, dating back to 2016. You remember the time that he had with the Jaguars. Was part of that run that they had. Was part of the Super Bowl run with the Rams, and has been in Miami for the last two seasons. But now there's talks about him him wanting out of Miami, and they're being traded in the works, and they're looking for a partner. And so of course the Steelers, because the Steelers are linked in every trade these days, are in the mix here. And there's a lot of people who do want to know or who are pushing, the Steelers could get Jalen Ramsey. That'd be an interesting fit. And I just have a few different thoughts here as to why I don't think this is that likely. I'm sorry, I don't. Maybe it happens. Maybe there's something in the works, but there would have to be very specific things that would need to happen for Jalen Ramsey to be a Pittsburgh Steeler. And they just don't seem to fit how the Steelers normally operate. One, Jalen Ramsey is due a lot of money. If you look at what the Dolphins are looking at, and that's the Steelers do have money. That's not as big of an issue right now. Like this year, he turns 31 this season. He's a $16.6 million cap hit. Next year, he'll be a $25 million cap hit. The year after that, 26.8, and then it goes up to 36 million before he starts his void years in his contract. And now that can be diminished, I believe, by quite a bit because the Dolphins have a lot of dead money in those years. So I believe the in the $25 million cap hit year, if the Steelers were to somehow acquire Jalen Ramsey with the Dolphins keeping the dead money, then he would be a $6.5 million cap hit in 2026 and a 50. And so there's ways to wiggle around that. And I don't think that's the biggest thing. But the biggest thing for me is where would Jalen Ramsey go in the Steelers secondary right now? Because this is the prove it year for Joey Porter Jr., right? Like this a big part of this season, as we continue to talk about, is Joey Porter Jr. This is his year to prove he could be a CB1, and that you're at the end of this season, you'll know whether or not you want to pay him, sign him for a long-term deal, or you want to sign him to a short-term deal, or you don't want to sign him at all and let him go into the final year of his rookie deal and just see what happens. This is the year for him to prove that. And then across from him, you went and got Darius Slay, and you're paying him $10 million to play outside corner, be the trusty older veteran that can make plays, and be a good mentor for Porter and help things along that way. Now, theoretically, you might say, oh, okay, well, Jalen Ramsey could just go in for Slay, and that'll be fine. I don't think the Steelers paid Darius Slay $10 million so that he can sit on the bench. And I think that's one of the biggest things, one of the biggest things in the way there. Now, there's a few other things. One, what would the Dolphins be taking to get Jalen Ramsey? As we've said, the Steelers probably don't want to come up off of any serious draft capital because they want to keep that most of the bigger draft capital so that they can trade up and get a quarterback next year. But then two, if you're bringing Jalen Ramsey in and you're talking about the money that'd be involved, the fit here, I just think it could jumble up the secondary in a way that might not be what you're looking for here. Jalen Ramsey, for example, if you're probably thinking, oh, well, he'll just play in the slot. Jalen Ramsey does play in the slot, did play in the slot a little bit last year out of the over 1,000 snaps that he played for defense. About 728 of them, according to Pro Football Focus, were outside at cornerback, but 185 of those snaps were in the slot cornerback position. So he does have experience playing there. And if the Steelers wanted to be really aggressive there, if they're like, you know what, Beanie Bishop, take another year to develop. We're going to go get this guy, and he's going to be, the guy, inside this year and maybe outside the year after that if Darius Slay goes. Maybe that works there. But I don't see that being that doesn't seem like something the Steelers would do, considering the other things that they're working on right now. Like if they go get Jalen Ramsey, like I think you could kind of put out the idea of them getting a big wide receiver 2 name, and maybe that's already in the work. Maybe that's already going to happen. Maybe they're still just getting a lesser name at wide receiver 2, to pair with Calvin Austin and Roman Wilson as the guys that are just under DK Metcalf and the Steelers wide receiver depth chart. But Jalen Ramsey would shake things up there. And look, Jalen Ramsey, I think, still has the playmaking skills. Like he's no slouch. He's not an old man that can't cover anybody anymore. He allowed 2 touchdowns last year, but also coupled that with 2 interceptions. Also had 5 passes broken up. He could be a guy that can line up in versatile positions and help you out a bit. And maybe as part of this defense that has more playmakers around it than the Dolphins defense does, with TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Cam Hayward, Minka Fitzpatrick, and the Steelers keeping Deshaun Elliott. Maybe Jalen Ramsey fits in with the Steelers. And in that way, that if the Steelers said, hey, Jalen, we're going to ask you to play in this specific position here, I could see it working there. I think it's unlikely that they're actually doing it. I do think the Steelers are probably kicking the tires. Like oftentimes when you hear these rumors start up, like, oh, there's interest here, there's interest there. General managers like Omar Khan, everyone across the league, they're always checking in on things. They're always making phone calls, trying to learn what the cost would be. So there's oftentimes you'll hear those reports like, oh, such and such is interested in such and such. That's not always meaning that GM is definitely going to trade for that player. In fact, most times it doesn't. It just means that they were just like, hey, what's they going to take there? Or sometimes it's someone else initiating. Sometimes it's the agent maybe making some phone calls. And so for Jalen Ramsey, do I think he would help? He would improve the Steelers defense for sure. If you threw Jalen Ramsey in there and you said, hey, you know what? We're going to put it Slay. You're gonna come off the bench. I think that could he be an upgrade? Yeah. I think it would be really interesting if they said, you know what, because we're going to be in the nickel so much, whenever we're going to have Jalen Ramsey on this team, rotate him with Porter and Slay, and most of the time outside. But when we get into nickel packages and dime packages, Jalen Ramsey, you bump into the slot, we put your aggressive cover skills in the middle part of the field. That would be very interesting. It would load up this defense with talent. It would give them, another playmaker there. But again, just the amount of money that it would take up in the salary cap with the chemistry mixes that they already have. Also, if you bring in Jalen Ramsey, good luck ever seeing the field Corey Trice, and that's another guy I think that they want to see a little bit more of this year. And again, that's not saying that the Steelers definitely shouldn't get Jalen Ramsey. I just don't think that they will go get Jalen Ramsey for whatever it would cost to get him. You look at, and again, like I brought this up before with Jaire Alexander. Jaire Alexander, the Ravens went and got him. That guy's missed 20 games in the last 2 years combined. I don't think that that's the move for any team right now. He needs to prove he can stay healthy longer term. And there were also some definite issues in Green Bay that led to him being suspended by the team. That's pretty intense. But Jalen Ramsey, for the personality that he's been for most of his career, I think he's shown that he can kind of just be who he needs to be. And I think that's where, if the Steelers were to get him, I think he'd be an addition. I don't see this fitting what the Steelers normally do when it comes to adding talent at positions. But hey, you know what? If you had told me a few years ago that Aaron Rodgers would be a Pittsburgh Steeler, I would say you were crazy. And here we are today. So maybe that's in the works. Maybe there's something there, but I don't think that that's a hard push right now for the Steelers right now. I think they're keeping an eye on things with Miami, and they're trying to see how bad do things get. Because you know what? If things get real bad and you get them for a song, like you can get them real cheap, fine. Do you take them and then go from there. But for me, I think Jalen Ramsey is more of just the Steelers just checking in on who all is available, what all does that cost, and I don't see that being the big move the Steelers might make here. In fact, I still think they're going to be bigger players for a wide receiver at some point this offseason. We'll get to that. But hey, we got a lot of your questions to get to here on this show. We're going to get to a few more on this episode here. That'll be coming up next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. But first, I want to remind you this show is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. The NBA Finals are going to Game 7 this Sunday night with the Indiana Pacers and the Oklahoma City Thunder all tied up at 3 games apiece. The action has been spectacular all series with both sides making big plays, and now it all comes down to one game to decide who's the NBA champion. Be sure to get in on this big-time action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, to place your bets today. You don't just have to bet on who wins and by how much. You can bet on player props, performance trends, save game parlays, and there's more ways to have fun as a fan and play smart and win big than ever before. Remember, the Thunder got several stars on their team: SGA, Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams. Thunder have been dominant all season, but the Pacers, Tyrese Halliburton was able to play, and he was back. Pascal Siakam looked phenomenal in Game 6. Benedict Mathurin, TJ McConnell. There's so many stars on both sides. There's so many players to bet on. You got to do it with FanDuel Sportsbook, the #1 sportsbook in America. And remember, if you're new to FanDuel, you can win $200 in bonus bets if you hit on your first bet of $5 or more today. It's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first bet of $5 or more, and if you win, you'll get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you your daily episode here. We're going to jump to some call-in questions here. As always, you can call in with your question at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep your question under a minute, and we will try to get your answers on the show. Again, we got a lot of call-in questions, and literally y'all keep coming with them, and that's great. I'm not saying stop. Keep them coming. We appreciate the questions, and they're gonna be give us some more chances to have fun with answering your questions as we get closer and closer to the season. But let's get to some of these calls today. This one focuses on the offensive side of the ball. Paul, Greensburg, Pennsylvania, take it away.
Hey, Chris. This is Paul from Greensburg. And Darnell Washington, I think, is going to really come into his own this year. How do you see him out there on the practice field? And Aaron Rodgers is building his confidence up, and DK and Aaron Rodgers' relationship seems to be really strong. So I am so excited about how far this can go, and I know you have a first-hand look at all the Steelers things that are going on, and so I would just like to hear how you feel about the tight end position and wide receiver, and if we need another wide receiver, because I know we have a few good wide receivers in the room also. Okay, Chris, thank you very much. Love the show, and keep doing a great job like you do. Okay, bye.
Thanks, Paul. As always, you can call in like Paul did at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep a question in a minute. We try to get you on the show. Okay, so let's get to a few things here. Now, Paul's asking about specific players. He led off about Darnell Washington. I talked before about this. Darnell Washington, I think, has been a guy that needed to unlock things by himself, but also needed to be unlocked in the offense. And this could be a year where both happens. He talked about how he's worked on his route tree. He's running so many more different things as far as route running, where he can line up. We talked to him. We had a clip of him, I think it was maybe last week on this show, when we talked to him during minicamp, and he talked about how, like, in Arthur Smith's formations that they've been working on in OTAs and minicamp, he's lining up in so many different spots, and they're saying, hey, go here, go there. There's different formations. They are reorganizing this offense, or restructuring this offense, to be able to I think give more passing opportunities, or more different looks and passing opportunities for Aaron Rodgers. And best believe Darnell Washington needs to be part of that plan. And he should have been before. I mean, again, even in Matt Canada's offense, I remember when Darnell Washington was a rookie, there were plays where he was just run a simple flat route, just run to the side. You're lining up in the middle part of the field. You run to the sideline, stop, turn, look back at the quarterback. And there'd be times where he had 5 yards of space or 8 yards of space and wouldn't get the ball, and the play would result in a bad play. When it's just like, look, there's this huge behemoth guy who can move, who can hurdle, who can run through people. Just kick him the ball for an easy completion. Let him get 5 to 8 to 10 yards if he feels like he's trucking through people that way, and let him work that way. And I think that's something that Darnell Washington could have been, but I think he can be even more now with the different things that he's learning how to do. He's learning how to run routes. And if you asked for a specific moment where he looked really good in minicamp, in fact, it was the last pass of minicamp. Will Howard threw a strike to him high up in the middle of the field. He caught it in stride, brought it down easily, and just went into the end zone there. I think Darnell Washington has a lot of potential, but let me look at it from this way: who benefits the most from Rodgers being in Pittsburgh? I think that's a tougher question. And when I think about it, I think about how a lot of these guys, they've had older quarterbacks their whole lives. So and Aaron Rodgers might be the best one. Like you think about not their whole lives, but their whole NFL career. If you think about Pat Freiermuth when he came in Ben's last year. And then you had Mitch Trubisky, you had Kenny Pickett, you had Mason Rudolph, and then you had Russell Wilson last year with Justin Fields. Pat Freiermuth, is a guy that's kind of seen it all. I think that he could also benefit from this because he's going to be, again, the middle part of the field is going to be a lot more of an important part of this offense than it had been in recent years because of the trust that Aaron Rodgers will be given for the Steelers and the weapons that the Steelers have on their roster. And I do think that there's going to be guys that benefit from that. And so who benefits the most? It's tough to say who benefits the quote unquote most at this point because it depends on who, what type of players they're going to want to target more. But I do really like the idea of just Darnell Washington just getting more red zone chances and just getting more passes in the middle part of the field. Same thing for Pat Freiermuth. I think both of those guys can balance the field. And then all of a sudden, if those guys are getting passes in the middle part of the field and teams have to help, supply more stuff there, that's going to get you more one-on-ones with DK Metcalf on the outside where he can run past guys and you can just get him a deep ball that he scores big on, or you get more one-on-one opportunities for people. I think that's the thing here is that the Steelers, when it comes to their offensive targets with Aaron Rodgers is, again, not going to make this team a Super Bowl contender, in my opinion. I think that they'll be a better contender going into the playoffs than they were last year. I think that he'll provide a steadying presence, but I don't think he's still that guy that can take it to just carry a team on his back to the Super Bowl. And heck, he really hasn't done it since he beat the Steelers. So, but again, I think that there's other reasons why they went and got him. And I think one of them is because he's ran several different offenses, several different types of offenses, and he's always found a way to be effective. Well, not always found a way, but most times he finds a way to get his numbers and be effective as a passer and read the defense. I think that with the opportunities that he's going to have in Pittsburgh, with the players, with the coaches, with the things that he has around him, he's going to want to make it work. He's going to be doing it what he can to get certain guys the ball in certain situations. So I think that if I was to pick one, I think it'd be impossible because I think a lot of people are going to really benefit from Aaron Rodgers being in this offense, Arthur Smith drawing things up. And again, there's going to be a balanced look. I don't think this is going to be just, hey, Aaron Rodgers, just drop back all the time, throw all the time. You're going to be great. You're going to be awesome. You're going to be unstoppable. I think that a big part of this is going to be having that balance. They need to have a run game. And if they have that, if they have a run game and they're able to put some more things together, I do like their chances to be a better team, and I think that's going to be the big question: is can they be a better team than this past season? And who knows? Maybe they finish strong and they look really good, at the end of the season, and then we just have a different tone. But there's a lot of bridges to cross before we get there, and we'll have plenty of time to cross them. But who benefits the most? I'll say Pat Freiermuth could stand to benefit the most. You look at Pat Freiermuth's career and the numbers that he's put up. Last year, he tied his career high of 7 touchdowns. He got that in his rookie season with Ben Roethlisberger, and then last season with Russell Wilson. But imagine having a guy like Aaron Rodgers who's going to see the middle part of the field, get him the ball there in those spots. That could be something huge. And if Pat Freiermuth is making more plays and doing that with Aaron Rodgers, it's going to set a really good tone, I think, moving forward. And that's going to be something that can help. But again, DK Metcalf, how does he fit in? Darnell Washington, how does he fit in? I think the good thing about Aaron Rodgers is, again, as I've said before, I think his cerebral skills as a quarterback are top notch still, and he can still do that. And I think that's where, he's probably going to try to do his best with try to get some of these guys along and develop his own playmakers in the Steelers offense. So I'll say to answer the question as far as which offensive target benefits Rodgers the most, it's just the tight ends. I think that they are. I think that they're gonna benefit the most. They're gonna get more chances in the middle. They're gonna get more chances to show their route running ability, and they're gonna get more chances to show their hands. And if they take advantage of that, that can make both of them bigger stars in the NFL, especially with Darnell Washington's rookie deal coming up next year. That's gonna be interesting to watch there for sure. We're gonna take another quick break. When we come back, I want to dive into a narrative that has been out there and that it sparked me wanting to dive into this sparked from one of the questions I got. And you'll see that question next here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter. Stick with us. We'll be right back. Back here in the Locked On Steelers podcast, I'm your host, Chris Carter. We continue our show here today. This next question, I think, is really interesting, and it's going to stem into a series of thoughts that I think counter some of the statements that have been put out there in the past about the Steelers' quarterbacking situation and how it's been handled of late. But let's dive into the actual question first before we go into narrative stuff. Here's Wade from Lansing, Michigan.
This is Wade from Lansing, Iowa, and I think that signing Aaron Rodgers was a mistake. I would have rather seen the Steelers roll the dice with Mason Rudolph and see what happens. I'm wondering what you think the Steelers are looking for in a quarterback. Whether they draft one next year or they sign him as a free agent. I enjoyed the show. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you, Wade, and I apologize for getting the wrong state there. That's what I get for trusting Google transcribing to get to translate what you had there as far as what state you stated there. But as always, you can call in like Wade did at 412-223-6644. Leave your name, where you're from. Keep the question under a minute. Wade, so okay, part of what you dive into here, Wade, and you think that Aaron Rodgers shouldn't have brought in, you should have gave Mason Rudolph a shot. And I think, hey, if that's your take, that's your opinion. Hey, that's your opinion. I think Mason Rudolph has had his shot in the NFL. And what I mean by that is, I think there was a part of Mason Rudolph that was wondering at the end of the 2023 season, what if I had a chance to just be the starter and just get a chance to show that, hey, whatever situation you put me in, I'm going to play really well. And I can be an NFL starting quarterback, even if it means bouncing around as a starter, I can be that guy. And so I think that's why he left in 2023. And again, I think that what I'm about to say about Mason Rudolph, I think that he's had a remarkable journey. I've always said that I thought his 2019 season was one of the roughest, toughest years of any player that I've ever watched, just experience thing after thing, from Earl Thomas just decapitating him and them having to like literally take his face mask off, to Myles Garrett assaulting him with a helmet and then accusing him of using a slur after that, and then that being unfounded. And then after that, he got benched for Devlin Hodges. That was embarrassing for him. And then, of course, when he got back, he broke his collarbone. Like, that was a rough year, and he persevered through that, and he deserves a lot of credit for that. And then in 2023, when he has that big game against the Bengals at the end of the season, and he tells us, he's like, I was studying for the real estate exam. Like, I was planning on this was my last year in the NFL. And then it's not. He wins 3 straight games to get the Steelers to the playoffs and doesn't do a terrible job in the playoff game against the Bills. I mean, it wasn't a winning performance, wasn't really close to a winning performance, but he at least gave them serviceable backup quarterback play. And there was the question, hey, what if he could just be the starter? What if he could just get the reins for more than a game or two here and there? What if you gave him like a month to be the starting quarterback and let him work things out? And I think it was reasonable for him to wonder, hey, I want to prove it to myself that I can go be the guy. So he went to Tennessee and he did that. And it didn't work out. Like, you look at the numbers in Tennessee, 9 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. His completion rate dropped 10% more than 10% from his last year with the Steelers. And it just didn't work out. And so I think he was like, all right, cool. I tested that out. Pittsburgh, I'll come back. I'll be the backup quarterback that, I think I can be. And there's a whole career to be made in being the Steelers backup quarterback. If you're not the starting caliber guy and you want to have a safe place, the Steelers have shown they're willing to house guys that are willing to be, a good part of the locker room. as Charlie Batch and Byron Leftwich and guys that have stuck around and made millions of dollars off of that and use that to benefit the rest of their careers. But again, that's why the Steelers aren't just sticking with Mason Rudolph. That's why they're going and getting Aaron Rodgers, because we've seen that again with his 5 starts last year with the Titans. And again, the Titans worst team in football last year, but they were 1-4 with him. And you look at what he did what he's done for the Steelers. I think that there's like, I get that there's some Steelers fans that are excited about the potential, but like, I do think that Mason Rudolph has had his fair chances. In 2019, that was the year to be like, all right, let's come in and see how good you are just coming out the gate, and you still had talent on the offense. You still had, a run game. You still had an O-line. You still had pieces around you. And again, he wasn't terrible that year. He wasn't good, but, 13 touchdowns to 9 interceptions. But that year he didn't prove that he was going to be the next guy. And then, the next time he gets a start, he plays against the Browns at the end of the 2020 season, loses that game with the Steelers backups. The next time he gets a chance, it's against the Lions in 2021. That was that super dreary, rainy game that they tied against the Lions. One of the roughest situations I've ever covered, just as far as like aesthetically, being in the rain for 4 hours of football. But then again, he has that 2023 season where he goes on that great run, and that was awesome. But again, I think Mason Rudolph is a backup quarterback. His best years are with the Steelers as a backup quarterback, and I think he understands this. He understands he can make millions of dollars, not getting his body destroyed every single weekend for probably the next 8 to 10 years, or however long the Steelers want to keep him as a backup quarterback. However, he's what, 29 years, so not 8 to 10 years, maybe like 4 or 5 years. But he'll be 30 this year. So that's a nice career. That's great money to be making. You made it if you did that. And I think again, the Steelers, they gave him those chances. And if you're gonna say, oh well, Matt Canada and this, that, and the third, okay, yeah, but you know what? You still got to come and you still got to do your best. You still got to come out and show like, hey, I can be that guy. And I think it's kind of shown he's a backup quarterback, and that's fine. And if you don't want Aaron Rodgers because you think that he's not going to be elite, I agree. I don't think he's going to be elite, but he's going to be better than that. And for all the things that Mason Rudolph, I think Mason Rudolph, like, he's a good game. He's fine game manager. We'll check it down. We'll avoid the turnovers. And again, like you look at in the 3 games that he started for the Steelers in the regular season in 2023 to help them get to the playoffs, he threw 0 interceptions. Put him 1 year with the Titans, he threw 9. And that was a 9 in 5 games. So I don't think the Steelers should have just said, hey, Mason, this is your year. I think it was always they once they talked to Aaron Rodgers, that was it. There was a handshake and agreement. They were going to be like, okay, come to town, be ready to go, and we'll rock with that. But I've seen this narrative about how the Steelers have just done Mason Rudolph so dirty. They've been so wrong. He's been so wronged by this organization. They're the reason he's in the NFL. They're the reason for all the knocks about, oh, Thomas doesn't know how to get the best out of his quarterbacks. I think that the Steelers have gotten the best out of Mason Rudolph. I remember even last year when the Titans played the Bills, I think it was like in October or whatever, and he threw a touchdown in the first quarter, and like some people were like, oh, see, he's so much better with the Titans than he is with the Steelers. This is because the Steelers don't know how to handle Mason Rudolph, and then they got utterly destroyed. Like, the Steelers lost to the Bills solidly. The Titans were completely dismantled. And also, that was the only touchdown he threw against there. Like, legitimately, Mason Rudolph threw against the Bills in their house. The Steelers, Mason Rudolph threw more touchdowns, had better numbers, better passer rating, better everything under the Steelers than he did with the Titans. So like that wasn't a thing. And in fact, I think you look at most quarterbacks, outside of like Mitch Trubisky, their best years have been with the Steelers. Maybe Kenny Pickett will prove everything wrong when in Cleveland this year. Maybe he's got to have to show more than he did with the Eagles to prove that. But right now, still his best years with the Steelers, even as a Super Bowl champion. I'm talking about individual performance-wise, his best plays, his best moments have come with the Steelers. So if I'm Mason Rudolph, I said, hey, my situation worked there, so I'm going to go with that. And even he gets that. This is why he's back. They're happy to have him. He's happy to be there. And I think they even showed the confidence. Like several players said, hey, if it's got to be Mason, it's got to be Mason. Calvin Austin said full-chested to us several times. He's like, hey, we were down 7 points in the fourth quarter to the Bills in that playoff game with Mason. We'd be totally fine with that. And I think, hey, if Aaron Rodgers goes down, Mason is a fine backup to take the reins and hold on to things and just try to keep things together and work with what the Steelers got. But there is no doubt in my mind that with Aaron Rodgers' cerebral ability to see the field, understand things, he can do things at a much quicker pace than Mason Rudolph when it comes to that part of the game. That much I am certain about. Now, how his body will hold up this season, who knows? Father Time is undefeated. You know, we saw the deterioration of Ben Roethlisberger happen before our own eyes in 2020. Came out early that season, throwing bombs and doing lots of things. And then all of a sudden, by like week 10 or whatever it was like, oh, wait a minute. He checked down Charlie. That's not his thing anymore. So I really do think that Mason Rudolph's not had anything unfair in Pittsburgh outside of the things. I think it was unfair with all of the things that happened to him in 2019. That was out of the Steelers' control, you know, being assaulted by Earl Thomas and Myles Garrett, and then the injuries he had, you know, I think all that was unfortunate, but Mason Rudolph has been given every chance to grow past them with the Steelers. And I think he's appreciative of that thing. I think that's why he's back. So, thank you, Wade, for your question. But no, I think Aaron Rodgers is, you know, a 4-time MVP quarterback is definitely, even at 41 years old, is still better than Mason Rudolph right now as a quarterback. And that's no slight to him, because I think that Mason Rudolph is a fine backup quarterback and was a great pickup for the Steelers to bring back to the organization to say, hey, if anything happens, we know this guy can at least come in and manage a game and do it the way that we appreciate. So, thank you for your question, Wade. Thanks to everyone who calls in with questions. Again, I'm your host of the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter. You can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, all the social media handles, all the same place everywhere. It's at Carter Critiques. You can read my work in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, post-gazette.com. You can find me here on the Locked On Steelers podcast every day, Monday through Friday, breaking down your Pittsburgh Steelers. Hope you have a great weekend, everyone. We're back here Monday with more right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast.